welcome to Guitarist magazine. We can be found on the web at www.guitarist.com. My name is Jason JROCK Houston. Today we're speaking with Texas-based singer-guitarist Joshua Roberts. How you doing today, Joshua?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you, Jason?
I'm great now. I'll be honest, Josh, I never knew anything about you till your publicist sent me a little press release on you, and I checked out your music, and I was kind of digging it. I want to kind of spread the word, let more people know. That's kind of what we do here. And I was curious, give us a little history on you as far as how old were you when you first started playing the guitar?
I was probably 10 or 11 when I first started playing guitar. I'm the youngest of three boys, and they were both playing guitar ahead of me. So it was initially me trying to do what my older brothers were doing.
Now, did you, were they a lot older? You know, I was curious, did any of you guys ever play together?
You know, we did, like, at home. We never did any kind of, like, family band or performance type stuff.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah.
But yeah, we would play together.
And who are some of your influences as far as, besides your brothers, obviously, but, some names we would know?
Well, it was like the whole family. Like, my parents played too. Like,
wow.
Music was everywhere.
Oh, wow.
But they did like a Christian folk thing, which is not something I really wanted to get into. When I was a teenager, I started getting into like alternative rock. I was 11 when Nevermind came out.
Oh, wow.
And the whole 90s grunge era just really took a hold of me, and that's kind of where I wanted to jump in and be like, I want my distortion up loud, I want my guitar loud, I want to play some rock and roll.
Yeah.
And my parents supported it, the family supported it, so it was really great.
And that's interesting because, again, I don't know a whole lot about you. Joshua, until your publicist sent me a press release, I was checking out the single you have, which is for the song Spin the World Around Again. Kind of a cool little pop tune. Now, if anybody was to purchase your album, Lost and Found, that's the third and the latest album you've put out. All the songs, are they kind of similar to that, or do they all kind of sound different?
No, it's something that I've been calling mixtape, because it's kind of like when
I remember
we were kids and we would make mixtapes. It would have something on there that was maybe like old jazz song. It was kind of like the Pulp Fiction soundtrack, right? Like we were listening to this music that was just all over the place.
And you're kind of
really satisfied our ADD Generation X kind of attitude. So my album's kind of like that. There's an instrumental Latin song on there that's got a trumpet solo. There's a kind of singer-songwriter song. There's a blues song. Most of it's got kind of an alternative rock feel to it, but kind of dips and dives all over the place.
Yeah, I kind of dig that because you're taking me back to when I was much younger. Growing up, like you said, back in the I'm a guy from back in the 70s and 80s. That was my era, kind of, and I remember making those mixtapes like you're talking about. I mean, and if you think about how much the world has changed since then, I mean. Back in the day, back then, you could walk into Target or Walmart, wherever you shopped, and you could buy those audio tapes, and we all made but they don't even make those now. I mean, they still got CDs, amazingly enough, but that's how much the world's changed since then, Yeah,
and I mean, when I was in like 8th grade, Dr. Dre, The Chronic came out.
Yeah.
And Foo Fighters was about to come out, and we were listening to just stuff and I'm in Texas, so George Strait's playing in the background.
Wow.
Everywhere I go. My parents ran a Christian folk band when I was really young, so like I just got influence from everywhere. I dig that,
because that's part of the reason I asked, because I really, to be fair, I hadn't heard the rest of the album, just heard the one song, and I was reading up on you, you're kind of in alternative music, and like I said, listening to the first single, Spin the World Around Again, a great little pop tune, and it makes sense that you would, that'd be the lead-off single, because I think it'd get you out there to mainstream radio, and a lot more people are going to be digging that, but I think it's cool that you have all these. I mean, talk about Foo Fighters for a minute. I mean, like you said, who wasn't a Nirvana fan back in the day? But
there's something. There's so much that's in that. The way that he started from scratch with Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
He went and bought a white van to tour the band in instead of he surely could have afforded a tour bus.
Sure.
And pay somebody from his label to represent him, but he did it the right way. And the way that he was able to overcome losing Nirvana, losing Kurt Cobain, that's
That's what's amazing.
That's historic. Like, how do you get over that?
That's what's amazing me about his story. It is so interesting because, of course, first we all know him as a drummer from Nirvana, and you think, okay, whatever he goes on to after that, he's going to continue to be this, great talented drummer. But he goes from being the drummer to the front man of a band, the focal point, the face, the lead singer, plays guitar. He's up in front of the stage, so he has a perspective that a lot of musicians do not play, having been a drummer.
And I'm pretty sure it was 95 when he put out that first album.
Yeah.
And I was 15 that year.
Yeah.
And I'm going, wait. I remember him singing with, like on Unplugged, we all saw him singing. Like, we were getting kind of introduced to him, but when they were like, no, that's him on guitar and drums and bass and singing and harmonies, so I'm like, wait, what? That can't be true.
Yeah,
and it was so just...
And what's amazing about, Dave Grohl's story, like we're talking about here, is, it's hard enough for anybody to have kind of one legacy band like that, but let alone two. Okay, he was already in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Nirvana, and then he just got in last year with Foo Fighters. Before, bands like, Iron Maiden or Judas Priest, they're still trying to get in. So again, I think that just kind of speaks to that guy's talent and his ability.
Yeah, the universe really wanted him to be something. I tell you, man, he's worked hard for every bit of it, and it's just.
Whereas his bandmate Chris Novoselic, the bass player, on one hand, if that's all you're known for, being the bass player of Nirvana, and that's kind of your legacy, that's pretty good legacy. But I think we've made the point here. Dave Grohl's kind of been able to do it on his own, and that's just kind of amazing. Now, I was reading on your album Lost and Found. Let me ask you, is it available for people to get just digitally? Can people get their hands if they want a physical copy?
We've been having some issues with our merch company, so I'm
sense.
Getting that fixed right now.
Yeah.
We did print it on CD, kind of just for the nostalgia of it.
Yeah.
And we've also done this really cool idea. They look like a cassette tape. They come in a case with liner notes like a cassette tape.
Wow.
It's a USB drive.
Wow, I dig that.
So you can plug it straight into your car and it plays straight to your radio. Plug it straight into your computer, And it comes with all three of my albums.
That's getting pretty creative because, on one hand, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day about, they think it's pretty cool that, you don't even have to, have physical CDs take up room in your house. It's just kind of a file. On one hand, I can kind of dig that, but I'm an old school guy. I dig, like you're saying, reading the liner notes, reading and having physical.
Seeing what people look like,
Yeah.
Photographs.
Just on that level, I will tell you, Josh. The only way I was able to find your Facebook page, because you'd be amazed how many other guys named Joshua Roberts when you put that into search. And the way I found your Facebook page is because, like I said, your publicist sent me a little press release on you, and there's a link for it there. I thought, okay, cool, finally found it. But so people need to know that, and I dig that you get creative with that. You want to offer people kind of the latest technology, but okay, we're gonna give you. It's like when you bought something like Kiss Alive back in the day, you open up and you got that double vinyl, and they used to throw in toys and their albums and stuff, little extra stickers and stuff. Just something you wouldn't get with every other album when it gets released. And I dig stuff like that. So I was also reading. If you don't mind talking about that. I don't know how long ago this was, but you'd had a hand injury, and that you've been kind of recovering that the last couple of years. You mind talking at all about that?
Yeah, I don't mind at all. The album is on iTunes and all the places that you can buy digital stuff, by the way. Okay, so with my hand, I was 27, the magical musician age.
Yeah.
And I was working a setup for a concert in my hometown. Art Garfunkel had come to play with the Waco Symphony Orchestra.
Oh, wow.
And I was cutting a zip tie off of a speaker cable, of all things.
Wow.
I wish there was some great battle story about what happened, but I barely cut my hand. But it turns out the tendons are right there on the surface, and I I cut both the tendons in my left index finger, which is my fretting hand.
Wow.
And 2 months later in physical therapy, I ruptured the tendon that goes to the end of my finger and lost the ability to bend the tip of my left index finger.
Oh, wow.
So if you play guitar, that means I can't play an open C chord because I can't bend to get down onto the B string and hit that with my index finger. So I had to learn how to do, I can still use it. I can use my index finger like I'm playing bar chords. I can use it straight to play a lot of notes. I've really learned how to kind of get around. It's been, like 14 years now.
Oh, wow.
That was 2008 that happened.
Now, here's a question. When that happened, was it pain immediately? Did you immediately know you had injured it? Or
No, I thought that I just nicked my hand.
Yeah.
And I went to the bathroom, and we were putting, paper towels on it, and just trying to get the bleeding to stop.
Yeah.
And I tried to make a fist, and I made a number 1.
Wow.
I made a fist, but that one finger didn't move at all. And that's the moment that I was like, oh my God.
It just makes you think, because
play guitar again.
It just makes you.
What did I just do?
It just makes you think. I mean, even the guy from Full House that recently passed away, Bob Saget. I mean, apparently he had like a lot of us do. Apparently been in his hotel room, falls over kind of backward, hits his head or something on the headboard, and just bumped my head. It's not a big deal. And apparently he didn't know he was bleeding from inside, and the guy ultimately dies. So I mean, you just never know. And thank God it didn't go to that level. But that's kind of why I brought it up when I'm reading the article about you injured your hand thing. Wow, just that's a pretty bad thing. If you're a guitar player, I mean.
I never expected something like that to happen to me.
Yeah.
I guess nobody ever does. And I've met people who've overcome
worse
10
things.
times what I did.
Yeah.
People that lost an arm and continued to be an organist, and I got a lot of I don't know if influence is the word I'm looking for, but Django Reinhardt.
Yeah.
He was already a famous guitarist when he was injured and his hand got all messed up.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if he can play like that, I could at least learn how to play a couple of chords.
That's true inspiration right there. And then, I mean, you take it to the ultimate level, saying, okay, I mean, well, it's a different instrument. The guy like Rick Allen from Def Leppard, the guy's a drummer.
Oh,
he loses
that story, right?
He loses his arm, and he's still playing drums to this day. And what I dig about the Def Leppard story is, I mean, I seen a documentary on the band where they're talking about, we were never going to fire the guy from the band. That was his decision. He wanted to leave, or he didn't think he could do it. And and that's like the ultimate kind of test of friendship or loyalty, I think. But there's all kinds of stories like that. And I dig the fact that you found a way to get around it. And I bet when it first happened, like a lot of things when that happened, these kind of things happen, like you said, it just affected you playing the C chord, but you probably never realized how many songs have a C chord in that, and just
oh man, it's incredible.
Yeah.
How just anytime you grab something, just stick your pointer finger out and see how much grip you lose, and how much there's so many little things that you realize.
Yeah.
And on guitar, there's so many little things on guitar you don't realize that you need just this one piece of your finger for.
Yeah.
And I'd already been playing guitar for maybe 16 years at that point.
Yeah. Huh?
So I knew a lot of, the muscle memory was already there.
Yeah.
So it was actually surprisingly easier to get back on guitar than I thought it would be. And there was a song that I had just written weeks before it happened, and I was convinced I would never remember the lick of the song. It's actually the first song on the new album, Down to You, on Lost and Found. I eventually recorded it. Yeah, and I actually played bass. I got into playing bass as a way to rehab my hand.
Interesting.
I had messed around on bass before, but after I hurt my hand, I found playing bass to be a little easier on the finger, because I wasn't having to play chords. I was doing single note stuff. And it really helped rehabilitate my hand, and I became a decent bass player. But man, I have fun. I love going and sitting in with guys and playing. Yeah. Playing bass. It's a lot of fun.
And again, you're talking to a guy here. I'm just a music lover. I can't play a lick myself of any kind of instrument, but I do dig listening to music. And so I was kind of like a lot of people. I'm always curious, like in reference to the bass guitar. Is there a huge difference playing a bass guitar to a regular guitar? I mean, besides the amount of the strings, is it or more of a matter just on one you're plucking the strings, on the other you're pulling the strings?
Well, I mean, there's the simple fact of, if you push down, they both have the same strings, E, A, D, and G.
Yeah.
A 5-string bass has 1 string lower,
Okay.
But so the notes are the same. So if you push on the E string on the 3rd fret, you're going to get a G on both instruments.
Interesting. Okay.
The difference is how you play it.
Uh-huh.
So, like when you're playing guitar, you just kind of strum along, and you might not be thinking as much about your specific rhythms that you're playing. Whereas on bass guitar, you really kind of want to lock up with a kick drum. So you're really paying attention to 1, 2, like you're hitting on specific notes, you're doing things, and you're also trying to. One of them's on the front of the stage, and one of them's kind of on the back of the stage. I know it's not always like that.
Yeah.
One's a background instrument, one's a foreground instrument. Yeah. Unless you're Geddy Lee, then obviously you're standing up front and you are the main instrument. But that's kind of an exception. For the most part, bass, you want to disappear into the music on bass guitar. Yeah. And like Sublime's bass player, he will play 3 notes on repeat, and you would almost think it's just like on a loop, like on a DJ. Because he never changes it, and you get entranced in that, and you forget it's there. But if he stops, like it's so fundamental to what's going on, and so that's what's really the big difference. And what's fun for me is how different that is.
Yeah.
When I play lead guitar, you kind of step up to the front of the stage, you play, and you're in the moment. Yeah. It's part of the song, it's part of the melody going between the chorus and the bridge or wherever you're going with it. And bass, you're just the foundation of that.
Oh, cool. I mean, like, I don't know if you're a Black Sabbath fan, if you ever listened to old Black Sabbath stuff with Ozzy. I like Black Sabbath a lot. But like, Geezer Butler and all those classic Ozzy albums that they did, the bass parts are on all those records are really kind of just there as important as a guitar player, I think. You take something like NIB, the bass track in that's like the main riff in the song.
Yeah, and what's really cool about a lot of that stuff is it's able to be the main riff of the song and still somehow be the foundation, because the guitarists were so creative that they were able to put something on top of it.
Yeah, and a lot of people may not even realize because I followed Black Sabbath for many years, and Geezer Butler on all those classic Ozzy albums, he's not only the bass player, but he wrote the majority of the lyrics. Just for the fact Ozzy wasn't a great songwriter, I guess they split the songwriting, whatever. But he was saying, like, when Ronnie James Dio joined Black Sabbath, he was a great songwriter in his own right. I no longer had to kind of write, but I think that's a part of that because the bass player was one guy writing all the songs,
That's really incredible. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And it just kind of shows you how important one guy can be to, like you mentioned, Rush. Neil Peart, who's still considered, the late great Neil Peart, the new guy in the band. He was in the band for 40 years. Once he joined the band, Geddy Lee's a great vocalist and everything, but Neil Peart, he wrote all the lyrics.
Yeah, it's strange how some of that works out, and it's the way that sometimes the last thing you expect, you're like, wait, what?
Yeah, so it would make sense when Neil Peart dies that they kind of, not that they couldn't have carried on, but I think it makes sense, he was such a key ingredient to the sound of Rush that maybe they thought, it would sound a lot different without him,
Yeah, just not
and Joshua, I was curious, okay, so you started playing guitar when you were about 10 years old. Were you always a singer, or were you a guy that, okay, well, I want to write and sing my own stuff? Did you always know you had the ability to sing, or was it a matter of somebody telling you, you got a pretty decent voice?
No, it was. I'm that hesitant singer. I was always really into playing guitar. Like, I liked being the lead guitarist, but I was writing a lot of music, and it became kind of the necessity. My oldest, I've got 2 brothers. My oldest brother's very, kind of guy that can dance around and be the lead singer type. Get everybody's attention. And I'm a kind of halfway there. And so I had to there was a lot of it that I had to kind of teach myself.
Yeah.
But again, being around music my whole life, like we were always singing. I think at one point I was in the church choir when I was really young.
Interesting.
My mom was like the director, and she sang both my parents sang in that Christian folk band they were in.
Yeah.
So it just seemed really normal that people sang.
Yeah.
So I mean, I sang a little bit. I had to work on it a little bit of being a lead singer.
Yeah, you're not the only one, and that's part of the reason I asked you that is because a lot of the guys I've talked to over the years, doing these interviews, have that same story. Even some of the most famous guys that are frontmen, and like Dave Mustaine, for example, from Megadeth. Of course, he was originally the lead guitar player in Metallica, gets kicked out of the band, forms his own band, and his story is initially he wanted somebody else to be the singer in Megadeth, but his manager and other people told him, Dave, why don't you just sing, these are your songs, why don't you just try to sing them? You seem to have a pretty good voice. And he was kind of saying, initially he started auditioning people to kind of do it, but then he said, bringing in these other people to audition, and none of them were singing my songs the way I heard them in my head. So, and I think that makes sense. A lot of people, you write the songs, you might be a little more critical of how somebody else is singing your song.
Yeah, and Bob Dylan has been known to say kind of the opposite. He felt like he wrote good songs, but he never felt like he sang them right. And he would hear like All on the Watchtower, and he's like, I never sang it the way that Jimi Hendrix sang it. He thought it was like perfect.
Well, see, that's amazing to hear something like, and maybe it's just the fact that I know at least in my lifetime I've heard all these great Bob Dylan songs on the radio and stuff. So maybe it's just hearing him all these years. I think he's a great singer, but ultimately I think what anybody will say about Bob Dylan, great songwriter. That's why I think his stuff is covered by so many artists, and the fact that a guy like Jimi Hendrix, that's known for playing the guitar with his teeth on stage, can do a cover like that. I mean, that first shows you it's a great song to begin with.
If you read old Jimi Hendrix interviews and they ask him who are you listening to, that's the first person he says, Bob Dylan. I love Bob Dylan.
Amazing.
And it's like, wait. You're listening to Bob Dylan?
Yeah, like I said, we've been hearing Bob Dylan. At least I have all my life on the radio and stuff. I mean, he's a legend now, and it just shows you how old we're all getting. But I heard the other day he just recently turned 80. And he's kind of enjoying life, and he's earned that right to do that. But I mean, that says it all right there. That guy's been doing it for 80 years now.
It's incredible.
Oh, not 80, but the fact that anybody's had a career that long, more than 5 decades. I mean.
Yeah, there's very few that you can say that about.
Yeah, and another guy he worked with before his untimely death was Tom Petty. He's another one of my all-time favorite songwriters. And
oh man, there was something about Tom Petty that connected it all for me.
His songs were heartfelt,
Because he's playing stuff like, he's got the acoustic and he's strumming, and it's just kind of this Americana. And then he comes out with Running Down a Dream, and it's like, okay, no, you're rock and roll. And then he comes out with this, and he comes out with that. Then like the Wildflowers?
Yeah.
That album, I was just like, wow. It really hit me how just diverse he was when that album came out.
All his songs are really heartfelt. You can tell they're written from the heart. He's another guy, probably have somebody cover his stuff, and it'd sound great, but when he does it, it just like you can tell it's like a page from his life, story. Bob Dylan's another one, you mentioned, and I bring up Tom Petty because I don't know if you were aware of it. They had a band called the Traveling Wilburys. They put out 2 albums.
Oh, big fan.
Roy Orbison, Bob Dylan, George Harrison. All those guys together,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, George Harrison was my favorite Beatle.
Yeah.
So the Traveling Wilburys, that was something. That was a real eye-opener for me as a kid to go, okay, I need to go dig into Roy Orbison. I need to go dig into the Beatles a little more. I was already listening to Tom Petty a whole lot.
Yeah.
So, that was some magical stuff.
Oh, yeah, and then, like I was aware of who Roy Orbison was and all these other cats because, they're legends at that time even, and they all come together. Separately, they're just huge talents. But when they put that project together and all these legendary guys come together, I mean, it was pretty amazing, you know. It's just something, you know, lightning never hits twice like that hardly, but all those guys come together. I mean, that's one of the just greatest things that I think ever happened. And again, I bring up the thing about the singing because so many people have that story, or like you talk to somebody, they'll tell you, well, you know, yeah, I sing, but it's kind of a secondary thing. I think of myself more as a guitar player, and it's kind of like, you know, oftentimes I'd be thinking, man, if I could sing like this guy, but
yeah.
But when a lot of people,
I think George Harrison had a little bit of that, you know, because he was standing behind Paul and John for so long, and he sang, and he contributed to the songwriting, but towards the end there, and then when he went solo, it was like, oh wow, George is really something.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're at all a Kiss fan, but I follow, I'm a huge Kiss fan, and I bring this up because the original guitar player from Kiss, the lead guitar player Ace Frehley, in the early days of the band, all the other guys wrote and sang, and he was kind of a reluctant singer. And it wasn't until they all put out a like Kiss solo album, and he had the biggest hit of all the guys with his single, and he kind of got that helped him kind of get over his nerve to kind of sing lead. And when he went solo, you know, he sings mostly, you know, all his songs now. So it's kind of amazing that a lot of guys have that story. And also, if you think about it, like I was going to ask you, when you're up on stage, it must be hard to not just be the guy who has to remember all the, you know, guitar notes, but to be the singer as well and remember all the words to your songs.
Who was it? Now, luckily, I don't have this many songs, but somebody was talking about you can. I think it was Brandon Boyd. I saw this thing the other day. Brandon Boyd from Incubus was talking about once you get past 150 friends, there's something that happens where you can't remember names or something. And he's like, so once you get past 150 songs, you can't remember these lyrics. Now, my catalog's nowhere near that, and I already forget lyrics.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things that I think people don't trust in themselves, and also maybe don't realize is the muscle memory.
Yeah.
If I'll just open my mouth and sing, the right words usually come out.
Yeah.
But if I sit there and go, oh wait, what's that first line? Then I might miss it.
Now, I've often seen some of the most famous guys, like, they will tape lyrics, like, on the stage floor or something, or, you know, on the side of the wall. Have you ever had to do that?
No, what I need is first words.
Okay.
So, like, I might, if there's a song that's really bugging me, then I might, like, on the set list, put, you know, like, you know, the very first word of the line.
Yeah.
And I'll go, oh, right, because if I could just remember that one word, then the rest just spews out, you know.
And you've ever been up on stage and have an experience where, you know, you're having, like, a brain fart for a minute, but then the band kicks in and they kind of, like, lead you to where you're supposed to be?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So,
and luckily, you know, I typically just play like kind of power trio, just guitar, bass, and drums. And so, worst case scenario, I'll just kind of like take a step back and just kind of solo for a second.
Yeah.
Just kind of riff on what we're doing and go, okay, shit, what's the word?
Yeah. You ever played in a band with another guitar player, and what's that like, if so?
I enjoy it. I enjoy playing rhythm guitar. I like, you know, kind of like some of the stuff I learned on bass. There's so many sides to doing these things that you can really get into. A really good friend of mine, his name's Chris Castaneda.
Okay.
He actually produced the new album.
Oh wow.
He's got a band, and I'll go play with them sometimes. And we've done a lot of shows together where we were asked to do a show together because we've been playing together since junior high.
Oh,
so,
wow.
We met in junior high jazz band, and then we've just been like best friends ever since. So we've done a lot of shows together that way, and he's a little bit more of a lead guitar. Like, we both play lead guitar, but he's a little bit better at stepping up front and getting your attention. Okay, and so I really just like to let him shine sometimes, and it's fun to sit in the background and just play chords for him.
Okay.
And I like to think, if I was playing a solo right now, what would I want the guitar player to be doing behind me? And so come up with, you try to come up with rhythms that aren't standing out, so you're not taking attention away.
Yeah.
You're trying to kind of give him something to work on, and I like feeding off of another guitar player. I also do a lot of solo acoustic shows, and it's fun to do those with another guitar player where you kind of song swap.
Yeah.
I enjoy other people's energy. I enjoy kind of having somebody to talk to, somebody to vibe off of on stage.
And I think I know the answer to this, and just talking to you and listening to your single again, which is for the song, what is it? Spin the World Around Again. Like just listening to that song, one thing comes to mind immediately is you're one of these guys. You're a great songwriter. It's more about the song than showing off, But when you are on stage and you're playing the lead guitar, and you're up on stage and you have an audience, do you ever like to kind of get a little flashy, or is it again more if it works for a song, maybe?
So there's a little bit of me that's always reserved, and there's a side of me that's like, dude, you're the only guitar player on the stage.
Yeah.
You want to see lead guitar, so you gotta
give the audience something.
I'm not the kind of guy who's gonna jump down into the audience and walk around.
I get you, yeah. But you want to give them a little more than what's on the record.
It can be fun to kind of, so like when a guy hits a home run, right?
Yeah.
And he's running around the bases, it would be really weird if he wasn't kind of enjoying the moment.
Yeah.
It would be weird. Like, I love baseball, and so it would be really weird to watch him just humbly, slowly run around the bases. It's like, dude, you hit a home run. Dude, you're up there playing guitar. Like enjoy the moment, kind of be in it. And there's a way for me to do it without feeling like I'm being too showboat and I just kind of feel the room.
I get you.
If it's a chill room, then I'm usually chill. If people are pretty hyped, then I try and match the energy.
I mean, I get you. I mean, you want to give them a little more than what's on the record. I mean, a great example, that one of my all-time favorite bands, Deep Purple, especially with when Richie Blackmore was in the band. You could go see the band, and they'd be jamming out, live, if you go see a Deep Purple concert back in the day, and they'd be jamming out to one song like for 30 minutes, but they'd rock your world, and
right.
I used to hear them say, if you want to listen to the record, go home, but we're going to put on a show.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If I'm in a listening type room and everyone's seated, then I'm going to be seated and I'm going to be pretty chill.
You're checking out the room.
If we're in a room and there's a couple hundred people standing in front of me and moving around, then I almost feel like obligated in a way. It's like, they're here to see a rock and roll show, so we got to give them a little bit of rock and roll.
Yeah, and then the other thing I want to ask you about the current single, Spin the World Around Again. I listened to that and I'm kind of curious. I don't know when the song was written, but to me, listening to that kind of makes me think about what we've all been going through the last, 2 years, being locked down, not being able to work. Let's get back to normalcy.
It wasn't necessarily written specifically about the pandemic, but the idea was, I had the chords and I had the melody, and I was trying to come up with something that I'd been working on this song for years and years. And everything I came up with, I would demo it at a show or something, and I hated it, and I'd start over. And finally, when we started working on this album, I was in the studio and I still didn't have lyrics that I liked.
Yeah.
And we were in the middle of the pandemic. It was towards the end of. It was early 2021 when I was in there doing the lyrics for that.
Wow.
And so I was like, everything seems kind of backwards, right? Like I say, the sky's above me, the sky's below me, the ground's above me. Everything's. I was trying to think of opposites and what can feel like is going wrong is that everything's just upside down, everything's backwards. And so Spin the World Around Again is like, let's get to midnight and reset this thing, like start the day over. And when you apply that to life in general, like, the pandemic or whatever it is that you might be going through, that kind of feels like your own personal pandemic, sometimes you feel like you just gotta get to midnight and reset the day, go to bed, wake up,
yeah,
and start all over.
See, that's the message I got out of the song. Is not necessarily that it's about the pandemic, but kind of like that's the message. Let's get back to normal. I mean, I never thought I'd be living in a world where people could get fined for not wearing a mask, or a business could get shut down, or you better do what we say, or we're going to fine you a lot of money and close your business down, and all this stuff. I mean,
there's so much of that. Yeah.
And all these people wanting to shut other people down, it doesn't affect them, because no matter, like, these governors and people like that, they're going to still have a job at the end of the day. Nobody's going to shut them down. That's just one example. I mean, it got to a point not being able to go. Luckily, my job, they found a way for us to still be working all through that from home and stuff, and it's getting a little back to normal. That's cool and everything to me. But there's a point where, like, if you enjoy going to the movies, you couldn't even go to a movie theater for 2 years. And it got to a point here in California where I am, where the governor one day went on TV saying, oh, well, maybe the movie theaters will be a thing of the past, and the entertainment business isn't going to be like. And I'm like, this guy is getting on TV and saying all this crazy stuff, but then you're starting to realize, it could have came to that. So luckily, it didn't. But it's funny.
All that was going on when I was writing those lyrics, and definitely bled into that.
And I got to tell you, Joshua, to me, the reason I asked that is, I know when you listen to a song, it's all interpretation, and as a songwriter performer, you must have people coming up to you like that and telling you this is what I got out of your song, and maybe sometimes you tell them, well, that's not what it's about, but that's great if that's what you got out of it. And that's what I dig about the power of the song, the power of a songwriter, because it's kind of funny that that's the message I got about, at least let's get back to normalcy, or some kind of normal, whatever normal is to you, and that's kind of what you wrote it about.
Right.
So your message comes through.
A lot of my stuff isn't quite as clear I'm talking about. Sometimes I just write, and I don't really know what I meant until years later, and I'm like, oh. So like that was actually coming from this part of my life, and I didn't even realize it.
So like oftentimes, like when you write a song, I'd imagine, being the guitar player, a lot of times it starts off with a riff, but then how important are the lyrics as far as having a message, or does it not always necessarily really matter?
No, I think even when a song's not about something, it needs to somehow have a message. Yeah, which is a weird concept, but
well, it does, because I think, to me, some of these great songwriters we've been talking about, Tom Petty, Bob Dylan, George Harrison, the Beatles, that's what makes these guys great songwriters. That's what made those such great songs that were like the Beatles. We're talking about 50 years after the fact, and that's what makes them such memorable songs. The message that kind of comes through with all those songs.
Yeah. I'm always a little more satisfied when I'm able to do that. Like I've got a song that I did with my first band. It's not even on one of my CDs, but it's called Still Life.
Wow.
And I wrote a song thinking about what a cigarette would say to me.
Interesting. That's yeah.
I was sitting there smoking a cigarette. I quit smoking in 2010, but I used to smoke all the time.
Yeah.
And I was smoking a cigarette, and I was like, I was sitting, I can't remember what I was thinking, but the cigarette was kind of talking shit to me. Like,
wow. You
can't put me down. You're totally addicted. You think that you think you have control over this kind of relationship that me and you have, but I'm completely in charge. And so I just wrote this kind of song about that.
Well, talk about inspiration. I love hearing this story. I mean, on the surface, it sounds kind of crazy, you probably think, but that's amazing. You're sitting there and you get inspiration from having a cigarette. That just goes to show you that you can write a song about anything, and it could still be a good song.
Well, I've also tried to write songs about just random things that didn't turn out so.
Yeah, but I mean,
you can get inspiration from all kinds of places. I think it's just important to be creative with it and allow things to kind of unfold.
But what an interesting story!
And that song, the chorus is "Light me up, burn me away. Don't think I'm gone. I'll be back another day."
Yeah.
You can take that as I'm sure people have heard that and didn't realize what I was talking about. And they were like, oh, yeah, I've been in those relationships.
I mean, I dig what you were just, the story you're telling about, having conversations. It's like, a guy addicted to heroin, if he could tell off his heroin and
whatever, you're having a conversation with your addiction.
Yeah. And
I didn't think about it that way when I wrote it. I was just kind of trying to be, creative, and
you were very creative with that, and wow. But I'm digging hearing that, and I guess the final question I'll ask you for today is, the same article was talking that I was reading online about your hand injury. It also mentioned the fact that you have many other players play on the new album, and I think that's cool too, because you think a guy that's the guitar player, solo artist, not going to want to have a lot of other guitar players on his album, but that's kind of cool that you're giving these other guys kind of a place to highlight their talent on your album.
I think there's a lot of room in music for that, and it's frustrating to me that more people aren't like that sometimes.
Yeah.
There's solos on the album that I play, and I'm really proud of it, and it's nice to kind of show that off.
Yeah.
But there was a song, for instance, it's called El Tejano Rayal, and it's the third song. It's this kind of instrumental, Latin sounding song, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I wrote it, I immediately thought of this friend of mine. His name is David Polkingham, and he's played with some really famous people. He plays the lead guitar for them, and he's got his own stuff. But I immediately thought of him, and I said, okay, I can record this song, and I can put a pretty good solo on it.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can record this song and get David to put, a rhythm guitar track and a solo on it, and it'll be an amazing song. So, it's either I can show myself off and the song be okay, or I can show someone else off and the song be amazing.
Oh yeah.
And I think a lot of people
are missing that. Yeah.
Well, it's the thing when you hear people oversing the national anthem.
Yeah.
Okay. They think this is the only time people are going to hear me sing.
So I'm going to scream it out.
And this isn't the case for everybody. This is what I think.
Yeah.
So they think this is my opportunity to show off a little bit, and they don't realize that sometimes if they would just sing it really well, it would be better than them trying to show off all these little flares that they can do, right?
Yeah.
So with the new album, I figured kind of along those lines is I'm going to record these songs, and then if I think that somebody else can put a better solo on here, then I'm going to have them do it. There's a song on there with some chicken picking kind of country, right?
Yeah.
I've got a friend that is just, his name's Rodney Pyatt, and he's on the album. I thought, I can't
do that. Yeah.
Country chicken picking licks, but that guy, he owns
that.
Like Brad Paisley, and he's a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
And I'd love to introduce him to any of the people that listen to my music. I'd love for him to be on my album. I'd love to listen to a song with him playing a solo on it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where that came from. I'm really open to.
That's cool because a lot of people aren't like that, and I think it makes you a better player, playing with different types of players, showcasing different people on the album. Because like you said, you bring a guy like that on your album, and he's not maybe as much into, say, alternative music as you are, but people that are into what you do, they're going to check him out. Oh, let's go see what this guy does over here on his own, let's go buy his album. You mentioned Dave Grohl of Foo Fighters. I mean, he's got a guy in the drums there, Taylor Hawkins, just as good of a drummer as he was in Nirvana, and if you look at all the other guys in the band, they're equally as talented. He's not, it's not all about him, although it is in a way, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I like when Dave Grohl did that first album and he redid all the drums.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. If I went in with my band and somebody else was playing the guitar parts for me, like I was just the singer, I think I could relate to that and get really frustrated. Like, man, I know
how it should be done.
I've worked with bass players that I've said that to myself. Like, dude, I can play the bass line better than that, and I'm paying you. Like, I need you to do a little better. So I think you need to know what you're good at. Where like I know where I can do what I need to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of showing off your friends.
And then how important? Yeah, because you said you had somebody else produce the album, but how important is it to have like an outside producer rather than going and try to produce everything yourself?
I think it's more important than people realize. guys.
Yeah.
There's little things all over Lost and Found that I didn't come up with until, or I didn't come up with. Like we're in the studio and we've recorded the song, and Chris and Omar Vallejo, who owns the studio, are sitting there going, "Man, there's something missing," and they tell me, "Play this little riff right here over the chorus," and like on "Spin the World Around Again," I say, "Everything is upside down," and then there's this guitar riff that goes wow, wow, kind of bends up. I never would have thought of that in a million years.
Yeah, it's amazing.
They told me to put that on there, and it makes the song.
It's amazing what a producer can do. You know, a good example of that, I don't know if you know who Bob Ezrin, but this guy produced Pink Floyd, Kiss, Alice Cooper.
Yeah, for sure.
And like if you listen to Pink Floyd's The Wall, a lot of the stuff on the songs, just these little like integral sound effects, like the thing on, you know, just different sounds. And if you listen to like Kiss Destroyer, the album kicks off at Detroit Rock City. The little thing at the beginning where they're listening to the news report on the TV, and then the car crashes at the end. I mean, that was all that producer's idea. And the guys in the band were saying, you know, just adding a little news report, you know, at the top of the song. If we didn't have it in there, it would be a totally different song.
Think about Cult of Personality.
It
starts off with the speech.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know who came up with that, but I would imagine that was the producer.
Yeah,
and that totally makes the song.
Yeah, and that's like
at the very end when it comes in and ask not what your country can do, and it keeps going.
Yeah.
Those little things can really just take something to a whole new level.
And how old is that song? And you know, that's what you remember about that song. And that's not just you, but that's what anybody has heard Cult of, that's a thing. That's kind of a thing that stands out.
If you played that song for me on the radio and left that part out, I would be angry.
Yeah. See,
like it's a crucial part of the song.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about being in Texas. What is the music scene like there? I mean, is there a big rock scene? Is it a little bit of everything, or?
Oh yeah, it's really cool down here. You know, you got ZZ Top coming out of Houston.
Wow.
You've got it's like I grew up listening to ZZ Top. I grew up listening to the Toadies. I grew up listening to this rock and roll out of Texas.
How about King's X? Were you ever a fan of what they were doing?
Yeah, I like King's X.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really cool rock and roll that came out of Texas. And people kind of typically think of, you know, cowboy hats and country music.
Yeah.
So what's cool is the ability for all of that to coexist
and kind of come together.
People love Pantera, and they also love George Strait, like the same people.
Amazing.
They'll play those artists back to back, and so you get like a Houston rodeo is going on right now.
Yeah.
And it's the biggest rodeo in the world. There's 3 weeks of live music and
you get all that
rodeo events and stuff.
Yeah.
And they've got everybody. They've got rock, they've got country, they've got hip hop. The scene that I'm seeing the most, like in Houston, there's a lot of singer-songwriter. There's a lot of that, and there's. I'm not the only band doing this kind of alternative rock.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of coming back. There's a band called Blacktop Mojo.
Okay, I've heard of it. Yeah.
They're out of East Texas.
Wow.
And they've got a really cool rock and roll sound.
Yeah.
And I like that the music scene in Texas is like, well, what part of the music scene are you talking about? Or you know, what do you want to hear? You want distortion or no distortion?
Yeah, it's all available. It's available for anybody who wants it. That's cool, as opposed to trying to kind of separate everything, you know. Well, and then let's see. And so the final question I was going to ask you. So when you were making this album, do you do kind of the modern way, like where maybe you release a track at a time when you get enough tunes together? Okay, we'll put an album together. Is that how you did this?
No. I intentionally didn't want to do that.
Okay, cool.
I like the idea of that, and I think it works really well. But I wanted to put out I did Spin the World Around Again. It came out 3 weeks early.
Okay.
To kind of tease the album.
Yeah.
But I wanted it all available at once, because if you listen to it from beginning to end, it's about 30 minutes, and it's got this kind of arch to it that kind of weaves you through the different genres. And taking the songs independently can I think they all sound good on their own, but it sounds a lot cooler altogether.
I mean, that was the way bands did it back in the day when I was growing up, and you can people say you can't, but I think you can. You can tell the difference when the band's live in the studio together as opposed to everybody kind of emailing their parts in.
And we did it. We did guitar, bass, and drums all together live in the studio, and then we overdubbed, vocals and guitar parts. And guest artists.
The thing about that kind of
those days where we were in there with the drum kit and me and the bass player standing there, I can't even hear my guitar because it's in a sound booth somewhere. I hear it over the headphones.
In fact,
it adds an energy to it that.
In fact,
I've heard some really great albums that were put out, being mailed around studio to studio.
But, it sounds.
It's just a dynamic that. I don't know how it's caught on tape, but it is
Well, it's technology. It's technology, and it's amazing what you can do just from. I've talked to a guy that every guy in the band lives in a different part of the world. We have a guy who lives in Australia, another, the rest of them live, in different states, and they're still able to. I interviewed one guy from a band, and he was telling me until the band played their very first live show, which was at the Whiskey in L.A., they'd not been in a room together to meet face to face. And it's amazing how good it sounds.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, and then with the pandemic, a lot of people were doing these Zoom calls.
It really opened the door to that. Yeah, it really did.
Yeah, and so just technology is really kind of amazing. Well, Josh, I've really enjoyed talking to you, and so I'll let you know when the interview goes up, and you're more than welcome to post it on any of your sites if you like. I hope we can do it again because I really enjoyed talking to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed this.
And maybe next time, because I also have an interview series we do on the same site called On the Record, where we talk with musicians like yourself about your favorite bands, your favorite albums. So you mentioned, for example, I'll let you decide next time if you want to talk about Nirvana's Nevermind or another album, whatever the case may be. We kind of go into the album deep and talk about in detail why the songs and the album mean so much to you. So that's something we could do down the line. So let's keep in touch, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, take care, my friend. Bye-bye.
Okay, great talking to you, Jason.
Okay,
Thanks.
bye.
Chaotic Riffs Magazine.